between the Texas abortion law, which went into effect at midnight this morning, midnight last night, and the Texas voting restrictions, voter suppression law, which is in all probability going to be signed by Governor Abbott today. Between these two things, what we're going to be seeing, and a few others. I mean, this is just kind of the beginning, I suppose. But between these two very, very large things, we're going to see states in the United States where the rights of women are diminished, the rights of, and right now it's around abortion. Pretty soon they're going to start going after birth control again. It wouldn't surprise me if they try to take us back to where we were in 1972 when it was first, when the law was changed so that a wife could get a credit card without her husband's signature. We may even go back, back to that, number one. Number two, you're going to have some states where women still have rights and where people still have a right to vote, the Californias of the country, the Oregons of the country, but then you're going to have states where it's very hard to vote and women have very few rights. And, and those things will get extended. And it's the ongoing splitting up of America, essentially. And I think this is, and then, on top of that, you get like this rhetoric from Madison Cawthorn, the guy who got paralyzed when the Beamer that he was in got in a car accident. And Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, whose husband apparently went to jail for exposing himself to a teenage girl in a bowling alley. It's some of these folks are just so strange. But their rhetoric, where they're talking about guns and violence and blood and associated with things like voting. And the states that have expanded Medicaid and the states that haven't, and all these kinds of things, is basically, we're turning into two Americas, into two countries. And this trend has, we've been going back and forth on this really since the founding of the Republic. It reached a real crisis point in the 1860s. I think it's another crisis point was around the 1950s as a consequence of Brown v. Board. And we are at another crisis now. And the question, how is this going to play out? I honestly don't know. I mean, we're gonna see. But the one thing that gives me a certain amount of hope in this is that conservatives are overplaying their hand. The people who are going to be hurt the worst by this anti-abortion law in Texas are women who don't have access to a lot of cash, basically. I mean, when I was a teenager, in high school, in college, and, whatever, when I was a teenager, abortion was illegal in the United States. That was pre-73. In 73, when Roe v. Wade happened, I was 22 years old. And so when I was a teenager, abortion was illegal, and yet I knew several girls in my high school who had abortions. One illegal, and she died from it. Actually two that I can think of, that people that I knew that were legal, but they had them in a hospital, and they didn't call them abortions, they called them D&Cs. I'm having a tough period, okay, we'll open it up and scrape it out. But this was the upper middle class white people, basically. It's not going to be the wink and nod thing in Texas with this vigilante thing unleashed. It's not going to be like it was in Michigan in 1967. It's not going to be like that. This is going to be very restrictive. And so, and even if a woman has the means to fly to California to get an abortion, because abortion rights are actually protected by California law right now, If she tells anybody or anybody helps her buy the airplane ticket, those people who live in Texas who help her get out of the state may be subject to lawsuits. Whether these lawsuits can extend outside the state, I frankly don't know. I don't believe so, but who knows? But but in all probability, I'm guessing that wealthy women, and which of course is largely wealthy white women, are still going to be able to get abortions. They'll just have to leave Texas to do it. Which means that lower income women who are facing high risk pregnancies, lower income women who simply, having a baby will ruin their lives economically. It's not the right time. They'll have to drop out of school, or there's all these reasons why women have abortions. They will simply not be able to get an abortion, and you're going to see more unwed mothers. You're going to see more and deeper poverty. It's going to become more ingrained and more systemic. It's going to be a crisis. And the question in my mind is, will this be enough? Will this be sufficiently shocking to most of America that when or if the Biden Commission, which sadly has a couple of members of the Federalist Society on it, which is who's packed the courts, the right-wing group, but Biden put together this commission to examine the Supreme Court and the federal courts. Should we expand the number of people on the Supreme Court, for example? Should we put term limits on it? Should we put cameras in the courts? What should we do to try and clean up the court? Should we subject them to the Federal Code of Judicial Conduct, which they've exempted themselves from? How can we regulate the court using Article 3, Section 2? What exceptions can we provide to what the court may rule on? My hope is that when these things come back, there's some strong recommendations, and there will be a strong consensus across the country that because the court failed to protect the rights of women in the case of Texas, and because the court failed to protect the rights of minorities to vote when John Roberts and friends gutted the Voting Rights Act, and because the court has refused to protect people's rights to unionize, and the court has refused to protect rights to free speech. This is a whole, I wrote an entire book about this, the hidden history of the Supreme Court and the betrayal of America. All the ways that the Supreme Court, right-wingers on the Supreme Court have betrayed this country. That hopefully that will be the thing that pushes us over the top. And hopefully that, and that now that Republicans are getting their way, the women of Texas are going to go, what? See, up until now, you had these, anti-abortion folks who were just kind of viewed as wackadoodles. Oh, yeah, there goes, he's out in front of the abortion clinic again with his bullhorn. That's just, Ralph, he's just a weird guy. And yeah, we've got, a bunch of state senators who keep passing laws saying that if, you had Mike Pence trying to do it in Indiana, right, with his law that if a woman has a miscarriage, which is like 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage. If a woman, a normal miscarriage, if a woman has a miscarriage, she has to report it to the police so that they can determine whether it was caused intentionally. In other words, was this an abortion? An illegal abortion. And she has to have a funeral for whatever came out when she was sitting on the toilet and had her miscarriage, or whatever, wherever, however. And you had this, if you're old enough to remember, this was 10, 15 years ago, but it was a while ago. You had periods for Pence. Remember periods for Pence? Women all over Indiana were texting and tweeting and phoning the governor's office. Mike Pence was the governor of Indiana at the time, saying, hey, my period just started back up again. I'm good for the next 30 days. And there was this whole network of women who were notifying Mike Pence of when their periods came. So, hey, I'm not pregnant. So will there be that kind of backlash? I'm thinking that there probably will be. Because all of a sudden, I think that, in the case in Indiana, it was so obvious that that law was unenforceable that it became a joke. This law is not a joke. And I'm guessing that the women of Texas are going to say, And this could be the beginning of the end of the power of the Republican Party in that state. Or maybe I'm just dreaming. Maybe the women of Texas are going to go, hey, cool, we like this. I don't think any of us really know because, the last time there were serious restrictions like this on abortion was 1972. That was a long time ago. There's a whole lot of people of childbearing age right now who weren't even alive then. So to what extent is this going to wake up the women of Texas and the women of America? How is this thing going to play out? Watch this space, right? We will continue reporting on it and talking about it and keeping you up to date on what's going on. But this is a really slick trick that they pulled in Texas.